and then just exploded over and over again.
Took over the basketball game and set the tone for his team.
Well, you guys talked about it. Even though he put up numbers, they needed him to be more efficient. He struggled shooting from the field, struggled shooting from three. Boy, you talk about efficiency. That is the perfect example. As he sends the series back to Los Angeles. Final score here in Game 5. The Clippers 116 and the Suns 102. Thanks to our producer Tim Corrigan, director Jimmy Moore, and their outstanding crew. Of course, for Jeff, Mark, and Rachel, Mike Green saying thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in Game 6. Sports Center coming up next. And you will hear from Paul George. Clippers with a big win to keep their season alive.
Mike, thanks very much. We welcome you to Sports Center from our nation's capital. I'm Scott Van Pelt. Busy show. We got about an hour and 20 as we're with you until 1 a.m. East Coast time. Plenty of post-game coverage as Paul George making his way over to speak to Rachel Nichols. Also, Reggie Jackson expected to join me here on the show. Tim Legler with the keys on how the Clippers extend this series, send it back to Los Angeles. Mark Jackson, Jeff Van Gundy will join us. Stanley Cup blowout for the reigning champs. Levy and Melrose here. An insane day in Euro 2020. Well, let's get back to the second half of this game. Chris Paul with a chance to get to the finals for the first time in his career. Mask back on. Book told us that he'd probably go that route. Tim Legler and I talked at halftime. We both thought first 3 or 4 minutes in the second half, you expect the Suns to make a run. They do. They take the lead in less than 4 minutes of the second half. But the Clippers had an answer. Paul George, who was spectacular in this game, and the lead goes back to the Clippers. This is a tough one, man. Beverly gets into Chris Paul, who's up in the air, could break a wrist. He lands on Beverly's foot. Beverly called for a flagrant one. Paul hit the 3 free throws, and the Suns got the ball back. A scary moment there for Paul, but he was none the worse for wear. Man, they run that play so beautifully. Paul and DeAndre 8 and 5-point possession for the Suns, but then Paul George seemed to have an answer for everything here, and he will use that off arm to create space. Do they call it or not? They didn't there. Here, step back, bottoms from George, and the lead grows back to 11 as George goes for 20 in the third quarter. Obviously, Mr. Ballmer's enjoying that. Steve Ballmer loving what he's seeing. Double-digit lead into the fourth, but this Suns team can score in bunches. Booker attacks the rim. It's an 8-point lead. Booker clearly feeling that. He was hunting that shot. And with George catching some rest on the bench, it's back to a 7-point game. George loses it here. Out on the break. It's a and one. Cameron Johnson finishes plus the foul. Suns were down 13, and in the blink of an eye, it's 4. Is there an answer? Reggie Jackson. It rattles around and drops. The lead 7. George. No call either way. 50-50 ball ends up in the hands of Jackson, and he is in attack mode to the rim. So the Clippers continue to withstand the runs from the Suns. They could never quite get that crowd totally over the top and light the fuse in that building. And then George here, Jay Crowder gets him. This was called a flagrant after they took a look at it. And the Clippers with Paul George from beginning to end, a 14-point advantage at the end of it, which means the series will indeed shift back to Los Angeles. And George, it really was, I feel like it was a story of 3 different things. Marcus Morris Sr. early, we'll show you that full highlight. He was big early. Jackson in the fourth. George throughout. Just the third player in the past quarter century with 30 points on 80% shooting in the second half of a game, joining Anthony Davis against Portland last year, Dwayne Wade against the Celtics back in 2010. Rachel Nichols will talk to Paul George in just a little bit. Reggie Jackson will join us here on the show as well. Stephen A. Smith joins us now live from the Valley. And Stephen A., you're in that building, and man, we know that it is live, and they were ready to celebrate. This Clipper team, though, wasn't going to let that happen tonight. What did they demonstrate, and what have they shown us all playoffs long when the proverbial backs are against the wall?
Incredible guts, incredible heart, incredible coaching on the part of Ty Lue. We thought that when, Zubac was ruled out of the game because of his sprained MCL that you would see DeMarcus Cousins in there, but he started Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris was the MVP of the first half of the Clippers. The way he came out hitting shots from all over the place, he was sensational. And give DeMarcus Cousins credit. I mean, in 11 minutes, he gave you 15 points and 15 big points. He was definitely formidable. He deserves a lot of credit.
Agreed.
But it really all comes down. It really all comes down to Paul George. It really all comes down to what he was able to do. 41 points, just a spectacular performance. After shooting 5 of 20 in the last game, he shot 15 of 20 this particular game. He was absolutely sensational. There's no way around it. You've got to give credit where credit is due. He answered the call. Playoff P, not pandemic P, playoff P, showed up. And he showed up big time. And Reggie Jackson, 2 big threes to stave off Phoenix, along with a fast break dunk. I mean, you just look around, and it was a total team effort. The Clippers deserve a boatload of credit. I did it. Most people didn't believe that they would win this game, but they believed that they would win this game, and they pulled it out.
Stephen A., as you are there in the building, and we saw that there was that great shot of you and Wilbon from that, the Valley Oop, right? And Wilbon said it was as loud as anything he's heard. It felt like they could never quite get to that point tonight where they got the lead briefly in the third, but the Clippers always had an answer. Was the building that was so ready to explode just never quite able to get to that place?
Totally true, because the Clippers were scrappy. They wouldn't let them get on but so much of a run. And I thought that the Clippers were doomed when they came out. Devin Booker hits a 3 right as the buzzer sounded to end the first half. You pull them within 7. They come out of the half. CP3 hits a shot. And then also minutes later, he hit the shot that put him up 62-61. So when I saw that, I said, oh, Lord, here he comes. This is CP3. This is destiny that we're sensing here. But he gave you 35 minutes. For some reason, I think there's something wrong with that ankle of Cameron Payne still, because when you consider the way that he performed in game 2 with CP3 out, playing 37 minutes, 29 points, 9 assists, not a single turnover in 36 minutes. Then he hurts himself after 4 minutes in game 3. He hasn't looked the same since, hasn't been getting that minutes, and I think that's hurt this team because of the activity that they got coming off the bench. It's really only Cameron Johnson, who hits shots when he's in the game, but for some inexplicable reason isn't shooting enough. Hit 5 or 6 shots tonight. But in the end, Devin Booker, 9 of 22 shooting, had 31 points, but the accuracy still isn't there, 40%. CP3 still hasn't found his groove. He missed all 6 of his 3-point shots, and this team is going to go where CP3 and Devin Booker takes them. And the Clippers said, oh, no, wait a minute. Somebody else better beat us, because we're not going to let those two run roughshod over us. They're going to get their points, but we're going to make them work for everything, and they're not going to shoot it at a high percentage. So Monty Williams is going to have to figure out something, because the Clippers, scrappy, collectively came together and really was just all in them, and key guys made key shots. Paul George, Patrick Beverley even hit a big-time 3-pointer. DeMarcus Cousins again. Of course, Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris Sr., MVP of the first half. It was a collective effort, incredibly gutsy, and if they show up and do this in Game 6, we're going to be right back here Friday for Game 7.
Yeah, this Clipper team has been fantastic in these situations. Stephen A. Smith, appreciate your first take in the morning, and I appreciate you staying up late with us as always, my friend.
No problem.